in Liverpool, we're going to be looking at the history of William Henry Quilliam, or known later on in life as Abdullah Quilliam. Now, William Henry Quilliam was the first recorded Muslim ever to be in this country, and his life and legacy is one of the most famous ones of any Muslim in this country, because he was the person to first establish a mosque in the United Kingdom. Now, William Quilliam was alive in Victorian Britain, and it was the environment in Victorian Britain which really shaped him as a person and led him to become a Muslim. So Quilliam was living in Victorian Britain. Now, the society in Victorian Britain was very singular. It was all about industry. The Victorian Britain saw an acceleration of industry, and larger proportions of the British public were ended up working in factories. And factory conditions were very, very poor. And the people that normally worked in the factories were lower working class and basically living below the poverty line. This led to a surplus of people living in really, really bad conditions, and William witnessed this as he was living in Liverpool. It was in Morocco where Quilliam was first introduced to Islam.
It was in Morocco where Quilliam witnessed another way of living life. He saw that society doesn't need to be solely focused on the pursuit of industry at the expense of some people. This experience fundamentally changed Quilliam's outlook on the world.
It was on his return from Morocco that he announced that he was a Muslim, the first ever Muslim in Britain. Now, in 1889, William Quilliam started the Muslim Institute of Liverpool, and he opened the first ever mosque in this country. And that white building behind me. Now, when that mosque was first opened, there was a little bit of pushback from Liverpoolians. Liverpudlians? Scousers. The people of Liverpool. There were protesters in the street, eggs being thrown in the building, and patrons of the actual mosque being verbally accosted when they left. This was because people thought that Islam was a foreign force that could not mesh well with society. So the way that William Quilliam tackled this problem is by holding speeches and talks on topics that were familiar to people in England, things like the science of photography, food sciences, social history. This was to show that Islam wasn't some disruptive force, but something that could actually integrate into society. The way that William Quilliam established the mosque, it's very similar to how a lot of modern day mosques are established now. It first started off as a house and then was converted into a prayer space. It is now known as the Abdullah Quilliam Mosque and Heritage Centre, and was reopened in 2014, and prayers are taking place inside of it to this very day. In 2021, it's difficult to not be cynical about the state of the world and where things are heading. But currently, there are 25,000 Muslims living in Liverpool, and all of that started with just one man. Now, that alone is enough to give hope that Britain is becoming a more diverse, more inclusive place. Obviously, it's not perfect, it's far from it, but there's a quote from Isaac Newton that says, "I have only seen further than others by standing upon the shoulders of giants." And that's what we're doing today. We're reaching further by standing on the shoulders of giants. In those buildings behind me, there. I don't know why I closed my umbrella, but it's still raining.